You are walking down a busy street and someone collapses 10 feet in front of you. You look around. 20 other people saw it too. Nobody moves. You don't move either. You tell yourself someone else will help. But the real answer is far stranger than that. The real answer is that the crowd itself is the reason nobody is helping. The more people who witness an emergency, the less likely any single person is to act. This is not a flaw in your character. It is a switch buried deep in your brain, and almost everyone has it. Scientists call it the bystander effect. It sounds like a modern phenomenon, something born on crowded subway platforms or in comment sections where everyone assumes someone else will speak up. But it is older than cities. Older than language, probably. To understand why you freeze when someone needs help, you have to go back to a single night in New York City and then further back into the architecture of the human mind itself. In March of 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment building in Queens. Newspaper reports at the time claimed that dozens of neighbors heard her cries and did nothing. The story spread fast. It became a symbol of urban indifference, proof that modern life had made people cold and disconnected from one another. But two psychologists weren't satisfied with that explanation. Something about it felt too simple. Why would ordinary, decent people just stand at their windows and watch? John Darley and Bibb Latané, working at Columbia and New York University, suspected the opposite of what everyone assumed. They thought the presence of other witnesses wasn't making people careless. They thought it was doing something to their brains directly, something automatic and involuntary. So they built an experiment to test it. In 1968, they placed college students alone in a room, told them they were taking part in a discussion over an intercom system. Partway through, one of the other participants, actually a recording, appeared to have a seizure, choking and calling for help. When a subject believed they were the only person who could hear this, 85% of them rushed to help within a minute. But when subjects believed 4 other people could also hear the emergency, that number collapsed. Only 31% helped in the same window. Some never helped at all. Nothing about the emergency had changed. Only the number of people who might also be listening. Darley and Latané called this diffusion of responsibility. When you are the only witness, the weight of the emergency lands entirely on you. There is nowhere for that responsibility to go. But the moment you believe others are watching too, your brain quietly divides the weight among everyone present. You are no longer fully responsible. You are one fraction of a responsible crowd. And a fraction feels a lot easier to ignore. Why would your mind be built this way? Why would evolution wire you to hesitate at the exact moment someone needs you most? The answer starts long before psychology labs existed. For most of human history, you lived in small bands, rarely more than 50 people, everyone known to everyone else. In that world, an emergency was never anonymous. If someone screamed, you knew exactly who they were. You knew your relationship to them, your obligation to them, whether helping might cost you your life, or whether it would strengthen a bond you depended on for survival. Every decision to help or not help was personal, calculated in an instant by a brain built for small, tightly bonded groups. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies, including long-term fieldwork among groups like the Hadza of Tanzania, have found something striking. In small communities, bystander paralysis barely exists. When something goes wrong, people act almost immediately because there's no crowd to hide inside. There's no anonymity to diffuse the weight of responsibility. You are always unmistakably the one being counted on. Modern cities broke that system without breaking the instinct behind it. You now spend your life surrounded by strangers, dozens or hundreds of them, most of whom you will never speak to. Your ancient brain still runs the same calculation it always has. It still asks, how many other people are here and how much of this is really on me? But now the crowd is enormous and the math tells your brain that your share of the responsibility is close to nothing. This isn't just about emergencies on the street. It shows up everywhere you might not expect. Psychologist Bibb Latané went on to study this effect in dozens of contexts beyond physical danger. He found the same pattern in workplaces. In classrooms, in online spaces, decades before the internet existed the way it does now. People in group email threads wait for someone else to respond first. Employees in large meetings stay quiet about problems they'd flag instantly if they were alone with the manager. Students in enormous lecture halls rarely ask questions that they'd ask without hesitation in a room of 5. Have you ever seen a message in a group chat asking for help, watched the scene by count climb, and felt your own urgency to respond quietly drain away? That is diffusion of responsibility running exactly the same program it ran in 1964 and probably the same program it ran 50,000 years ago around a fire. There is a twist to this story though, and it matters. Knowing about the bystander effect actually weakens it. Researchers have found that simply teaching people about diffusion of responsibility, showing them the Darley and Latané findings, explaining the mechanism, measurably increases the odds they'll act during a real emergency. Once you understand that the crowd is silently telling your brain not your job, you can catch the thought as it happens. You can override it. This is one of the rare cases in psychology where simply naming a bias to yourself gives you real power over it. There's a practical trick built out of this research too, one used in first aid training around the world. If you are ever the one who needs help in a crowd, do not shout, "Somebody help me." Point at one specific person. Say, "You in the blue jacket, call an ambulance." The moment you collapse the crowd down to a single individual, you erase the diffusion. That person is no longer one of dozens. They are suddenly the only one. And people respond to being the only one almost every single time. Think about what that means. The size of the group didn't just change how people felt. It changed what their brains calculated as their personal obligation, down to a fraction so small it became easy to ignore. And reversing that calculation, turning a stranger back into someone with sole responsibility, is often all it takes to save a life. Your ancestors never had to solve this problem because their world never generated it. Every emergency they faced happened inside a group small enough that anonymity was impossible. You inherited their brain, but you live in a world their brain was never built for. A world of enormous anonymous crowds, endless group chats, and problems everyone assumes someone else is handling. So the next time you feel that strange pull to look away, to assume someone more qualified or more available will step in, pause for a moment. Ask yourself whether you are actually less capable of helping, or whether you are simply standing in a crowd large enough to make your brain think you are. You are walking down a busy street and someone collapses 10 feet in front of you. This time, you don't look around to see what everyone else is doing. You already know what everyone else is doing. You walk straight to them and you help.